Hi guys, I'm Brooke of Outside In, and today we're going to be talking about all things Philodendron Pink Princess. So this plant is kind of a cult favorite, part of the Aroid family, and it's known for these striking leaves with the contrasting colors of bright pink and really dark, almost black foliage. So what really makes this plant a fun mystery is each new leaf puts out a different type of variegation. So you can kind of see here that some leaves have like a speckled effect, some are half and half, and you just don't know what you get. Some leaves will even be fully pink, and that kind of just adds to the surprise of the plant and the fun of the plant as you wait for that new leaf to unfurl and see how much pinkness you get. So with that said, if it does put out a completely pink leaf, that leaf doesn't have chlorophyll. It's likely not going to survive on the plant. So while it's gorgeous, just know that it's normal for it to eventually expire. As far as the origins for this plant, they are actually unknown. So that's the other mystery part. It's believed that this plant came into existence in Florida around the 1970s, but in terms of parentage, it's not completely known. Experts do believe that this plant descended from the Philodendron erubescens, but it's not confirmed. So it's either a cross between two philodendrons or it's a spontaneous mutation of a philodendron. But either way, it's beautiful, and the one thing that we do know is that it is not naturally occurring in the wild. It is definitely either man-made or spontaneous mutation. So you get a bunch of different colors with this plant, which is also really cool. You can get these really dark, almost black maroon type leaves. You can get this hot neon pink. You can get a mint green, which we have in here. You can get this kind of bubblegum pink. So you have a whole variety of colors that this plant can put out, which makes this plant really distinctive because there isn't really another plant quite like it. Believe it or not, despite the steep price tag, it's actually pretty easy to care for. I would rate it more of a medium just because I wouldn't want someone to spend that much on a plant if they know absolutely nothing about plants. So if you've taken care of a philodendron, you're pretty much ready to go. It's gonna want somewhere to climb, first of all. So as a vining plant with aerial roots, it wants something to latch onto. So here in this 4-inch plant, you can see we just have a little chopstick that's kind of holding it from moving back and forth. But eventually as it grows into a 6-inch or an 8-inch pot or larger, it wants something more substantial to kind of support it and latch onto and climb upwards. So that would be a moss pole, a trellis, a bamboo stake, something like that. And as it grows, you'll notice that the leaves get larger and larger if it does have that support system. The leaves can eventually get to about 9 inches by 5 inches wide. We've seen some even larger than that, around like 12 inches. As far as care, the Pink Princess wants basically what any other philodendron is gonna want. So that means, as far as water, allowing it to dry out partially between waterings. And we usually say let it dry out at least halfway, if not more. So the roots want to be able to have their exposure to moisture, but also to oxygen and air. As far as sunlight goes, it's going to want a pretty high light area with no direct sunlight, because since this plant does have variegation, any direct sun exposure could burn the leaves more easily. So indirect highlight, so that's near usually a west or an east facing window. And you'll also probably notice that as you increase that light or even get a grow light for this plant, the variegation will start to increase and the leaves may even start to get larger and more pronounced. However, some people believe that the coloration of this plant is within the DNA and that it's already pretty much predetermined, and it doesn't really matter if you put it in that bright light like it would for other plants that have variegation. But it's really not confirmed, but I have noticed in lower lights just from personal experience, it tends to put out leaves that are darker actually, but have less variegation. So something more like this leaf with a little less variegation in this leaf. So on to fertilizer. Most philodendrons, like this one, like to have a fair amount of fertilizer. So if you just bought the plant, it probably, the shop that you bought it from probably already supplemented some fertilizer in there. So I would hold off for a few months at least. But if you notice that there are some granules in there, some little like fertilizer granules that have started to really shrivel up, and you notice that your plant has started to slow the growth a little, you're not getting these new leaves inching out anymore as quickly, then you probably are ready for some fertilizer. So you can either do liquid or granular fertilizer. As far as frequency and quantity, check the back of the box always, because every fertilizer is going to be completely different. So also a little tip about the water: if you notice that your plant kind of starts to have some brown spots, or like there's one of these leaves, I think this one, you notice some discoloration here, that's typically inconsistency with watering. So that means frequency and quantity. So you just want to make sure that, you know, your plant's not going through any like dry spells and then you're kind of flushing it with water. Keep it consistent, keep it the same without overwatering or underwatering, which that can kind of be difficult sometimes to get a hold of that. But once you're in that routine and in that cycle and you're adjusting with the seasons as well, then you'll be on a good pace with this plant. So since the pink princess likely descended from a plant native to rainforests and jungle conditions, it will enjoy some humidity. So if your plant is totally fine in your space, then don't mess with it. However, if you notice you're getting some brown tips or like crispy leaves, then you may want to increase the humidity, and you can do that with a humidifier, placing that near the plant, or a pebble tray. And the other little extra care tip: if you live somewhere where the summers are pretty nice and don't really get above, I would say 90 degrees or 95 degrees, and it's kind of hovering at night and no lower than the 60s, then you may want to put the plant outside during the summer months. It could really thrive in that extra humidity and that warmer weather. But always, you know, check for pests, because outside, that's a really easy way for pests to come into the space, into the soil, onto the leaves. So I would check weekly for pests and monitor, of course, when you need to bring it back inside when those temperatures start to dip. So that could help your plant really get that little extra boost to start growing more in those favorable conditions. So when it comes to repotting, you really don't need to repot this plant often. I would say maybe once a year to once every 2 years. I'm gonna slip this plant out and look at their roots, which I haven't done, so it may take me a second. Okay, it is coming out, and we're just gonna make a mess on the table here, but yes, look at that root system. Oh, and there goes all the soil. So this one is not ready for repotting yet. I'm gonna wait until it starts to coil a little bit more around the bottom of the pot, until the roots start to coil around the bottom of the pot. So one thing that I do want to bring to your attention is these smaller 4-inch plants a lot of times are still in that plug. It's like someone planted a plug into a 4-inch pot, and I just want to clear the air that is completely normal and completely safe for your plant. It looks, for this one, like the material is already disintegrated into the soil, and it's made out of natural material, and that's what it's supposed to do. But a lot of people think that it hinders the growth of their plant, but it's actually, I mean, the experts that produce these plants, these are now produced in patent plants, they know what they're doing, and they're growing it like that for a reason, and that is a natural material that the roots should be able to grow through. A lot of people recommend removing that layer. I would not recommend that, just because the roots can be so fine in those early stages, you can do damage to the plant, which can really affect the health of the plant in general. So I would always wait, and if the roots haven't grown through and the plant hasn't gotten really healthy and new growth in a few months, then you could try to remove it. So as I'm repotting, let's just talk about one of the main issues with this plant, which, I mean, some people consider it an issue and some people know what they're getting themselves into. So this plant does have the ability to revert, and that just means that the variegation can, for a time or permanently, go away. In that case, you'll see mostly dark leaves or just completely green leaves. So if your plant stops producing variegated leaves, the first thing to do is increase the sunlight without giving it direct sun. The second thing to do, if it has reverted, is look for that leaf where there's no variegation, and you're going to find the node below it. Cut away that part. And I know it can sound scary, especially since this plant can be pretty pricey and you're like, I don't really want to cut my expensive plant. What if something goes wrong? But just know that it will grow back. Especially make sure that it's at least big enough and you're not like cutting the entire plant away. And as far as any other issues with the plant, pests typically are not an issue with the pink princess, but if you do get anything, any little critters, it'll probably be spider mites, thrips, mealybugs, kind of your run-of-the-mill houseplant pests. So I would recommend checking this plant about every other week, or just whenever you go to water it, check in. Check the undersides, check the little nooks and crannies, and then also it's helpful to wipe the leaves down, maybe about once a month. So just get a damp cloth and wipe to remove any dust, any dirt, any dander, any potential pests, and then your plant will also be looking like really shiny and glossy and brand new. And that is everything about the pink princess, but if I missed anything or if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more.